Good evening, everyone. This webinar is being recorded, and by joining, you agree to be recorded. Welcome to the Department of Toxic Substances webinar on the draft response plan for the Long Beach Industrial Park project. My name is Jessica Anderson, and I am the Public Participation Specialist with the department, which we will refer to as DTSC throughout this session. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. The webinar is scheduled for 6 to 8 p.m. and the purpose of today's webinar is to present the draft response plan, respond to your questions regarding the response plan, and take comments. I will be facilitating today's webinar. So you are in a view and listen only role. Today we'll be taking questions through the Q&A feature, so please click on the Q&A icon on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen to send your questions. You may send as many as you like throughout the webinar, and we will respond to them at the Q&A at the end of the presentation. You can send as many as you'd like. However, we request that you send one question at a time so that we're able to respond to them adequately. Please note that we will not be taking questions or comments by the chat function. And for those joining by phone, please press *9 to let us know you have a question. Lastly, please know that we're hosting this webinar from different locations. We request that you bear with us if there's any lag time or longer pauses. We sincerely appreciate your patience, understanding, and cooperation in making this a successful meeting. Slide 3, please. Okay, so we are currently in a 30-day public comment period for the draft response plan on this project. It began on August 28th, 2024, and ends on September 27th, 2024. The response plan is in draft form while we collect community feedback and is not final. During this webinar, we will answer your questions related only to the draft response plan. We will record any comments, and formal responses will be given in a responsiveness summary document. All other questions beyond the scope of the draft response plan should be directed to the City of Long Beach, who's having a Planning Commission hearing on October 17th, 2024. Slide number 4, please. So I'll now introduce you to the DTSC team that is working on this project. Monica Hope, DTSC Project Manager and Presenter. Rania Zabana, who is our Lead Project Manager. Megan Earn, who is our Unit Chief and Project Supervisor. Dina Korda, who is our Engineering Geologist. Dr. C.Y. Jang is our Senior Toxicologist. Ben Stanfill is our Senior Engineer. Cheryl Mahoney is our Senior Environmental Planner. Jessica Anderson, myself, the Public Participation Specialist, and Elizabeth Leslie Gassaway is our Public Information Officer. Slide number 5, please. So the agenda for today's webinar after this introduction is an introduction to DTSC, an overview of the cleanup or remediation process, the site location and background, proposed development, investigation and results, health risk assessment, CEQA, the proposed response plan, safety during the response action, and finally, the next steps and how to participate. And following the presentation, our team will respond to questions and receive your comments during the Q&A session. So I'll now invite our presenter, Monica Hope, the project manager, to start our presentation. Monica.
Hello, my name is Monica Hope, and I want to begin this presentation by discussing who DTSC is and what we do. DTSC is a regulatory agency within the California Environmental Protection Agency, or Cal EPA. Our mission is to protect the public and environment from harmful exposure to hazardous substance releases. Since 1991, DTSC has regulated entities to prevent the release of hazardous waste, clean up contamination, and ensure hazardous waste is handled safely in California. It is important to note that the DTSC does not have jurisdiction over land use or development decisions. I want to provide a brief overview of DTSC's investigation and remediation process for when a proponent enters into a voluntary agreement with DTSC. In this case, Artesia Acquisition Company, who is the proponent, entered into a CLARA agreement with DTSC. CLARA, or CLRRA, stands for California Land Use and Revitalization Act. Once the agreement is signed, DTSC holds a scoping meeting with the proponent and the DTSC project team, including technical support staff. Afterwards, an evaluation or investigation of the site is conducted to determine the extent of contamination at the site. Then, a site assessment plan and report of findings are prepared to evaluate potential cleanup alternatives. Following that, a draft response plan proposes a remedy that is circulated for public comment. DTSC will then consider the public comments, and a final cleanup plan or remedy is selected. At that point, the response plan is implemented. The Long Beach Industrial Park property, also known as former oil operators, is a 14-acre site located at 3701 Pacific Place in Long Beach, California. I'll refer to it as a site from here on. You can see the site on the map on the screen in green at the center of the map. The site is surrounded by Interstate 405 to the south, depicted by a purple dotted line, a Los Angeles River flood canal channel maintained by the Los Angeles County to the west, depicted by a solid dark blue line, as well as Los Angeles Metro Rail A line tracks, formerly known as the Blue Line, depicted by a solid light blue line on the map. You'll also see an elementary school depicted by the solid yellow trapezoid, and residential areas to the north and east of the property on the map. For some background on the site, from about 1926 to the mid-1950s, Oil Operators Incorporated owned and used the site as an oil field waste dump. There are 5 active oil wells on the site from about 1940s through 1964. Those wells were abandoned in between 1992 and 2014. In the 1970s, there's partial cleanup of the site conducted, which include removal, treatment, and replacement of a portion of the former on-site oil field waste. In the late 1980s, approximately 80,000 cubic yards of sandy soil were imported to the site and spread at a reported thickness of about 2 to 8 feet to cover the oily sludge remaining on the site. The imported soil was graded, and then in 2019 and 2020, investigations were done by RU, who is Artesia's consultant, and they showed that the soil cover thickness varied from between 1 foot along the southern border of the site to greater than 17 feet along the northern border. A golf learning facility was developed on the site in 1996. The golf learning facility's operations ceased in 2016, and the structures associated with the facility were removed in 2017. The site has been vacant and secured with a perimeter chain link fence since 2017. On November 1st of 2019, Artesia Acquisition Company, or the proponent, purchased the site and entered into a clear agreement with the DTSC for redevelopment of the site to industrial land use, which would include a self-storage facility and recreational vehicle parking. Prior to Artesia purchasing the property, a remedial investigation report was completed for the site in 2009. The site was on hiatus for several years due to the economic downfall and did not come back to life until Artesia purchased the property in 2019. In 2019, RU, the consultant, conducted a subsurface investigation at the site. The results of the combined on-site investigations and risk evaluation confirmed that the sump material, impacted soils, soil vapor, and cover soils are adequately delineated and characterized, and that the groundwater conditions have not significantly changed since the previous investigation. In March of 2020, a site assessment plan and report of findings was approved by DTSC for 3 parcels. In June of 2020, a 4th parcel was added to the site, and the clear agreement was amended to include the new parcel. And then an addendum to the site assessment plan and report of findings was approved by the DTSC. The contaminants of concern at the site by media are total petroleum hydrocarbons, or TPH, volatile organic compounds, VOCs, semi-VOCs, and heavy metals such as arsenic and lead in soil. In soil vapor, there is methane and VOCs, primarily benzene, detected at low levels in the soil vapor. In groundwater, there are metals, TPH, and VOCs. Petroleum-related VOC concentrations are slightly above their respective maximum contaminant levels, or MCLs. Some of the constituents, arsenic, mercury, and barium, were detected above their respective drinking water MCLs, but are consistent with upgradient groundwater concentrations. Although groundwater does have a municipal beneficial use, saltwater intrusion and historical oil and gas production activities near the site have impacted regional groundwater. Groundwater is approximately 50 feet below the surface of the site. A health risk evaluation done for the site found that soil contamination at the site does not extend to or affect neighboring properties. Methane and VOCs in shallow soil vapor at the site boundary are below regulatory screening levels. The evaluation also recommended that ongoing air monitoring and dust controls be conducted during cleanup and construction activities to ensure air quality is acceptable, and perimeter soil vapor monitoring and post-grading risk evaluation be performed to ensure protection of human health. Please note, the DTSC is not a health agency. Please contact County or State Department of Public Health regarding questions on personal or public health. You might be wondering if groundwater contamination affects tap water in your home. Groundwater beneath the Long Beach Industrial Park is not used as tap water. Therefore, it will not affect tap water in your homes. The Metropolitan Water District is a tap water provider for the area. The City of Long Beach, in their role as the lead CEQA agency, has prepared a draft environmental impact report, or EIR, for this project that is currently out for public review. DTSC, in its role as a responsible agency under CEQA, will conduct an independent review of the EIR and determine whether the EIR has adequately analyzed all potential environmental impacts associated with the activities proposed in the response plan. All questions about the city's draft EIR should be directed to the City of Long Beach. Contact information will be available at the end of the presentation. For some history on the prior response plan, from November to December of 2020, DTSC circulated the prior response plan for public review and comment. In April of 2021, the city approved a mitigated negative declaration, MND, for the development of a storage facility at the site. In September of 2021, DTSC issued approval for the prior response plan based on environmental analysis of the city's MND. Then in October of 2022, a court ordered the city to prepare an environmental impact report, EIR, instead of the MND. The court found that the MND's analysis of hazardous materials, and the prior response plan was legally sufficient. On August of 2023, the DTSC withdrew approval of the prior response plan. The current proposed response plan. In February of 2024, proponent filed a new application for the development project. From February to August of 2024, the proponent, the city, and the DTSC met and conferred about the proposed response plan and CEQA analysis. On July 31st of 2024, the city circulated the draft EIR for public review and comment. On August 28th of 2024, DTSC circulated the proposed response plan for public review and comment. Going back, in late 2020 and early 2021, the proponents performed surcharge testing to evaluate whether soils at the site could support the proposed building. Surcharge testing consisted of mounding soil in the southern portion of the site and monitoring settlement over time. While surcharge testing activities were not within DTSC jurisdiction, DTSC approved a soil management plan ensuring that any potentially contaminated soil disturbed during the surcharge testing or any soil disturbance is properly managed. Additional questions regarding the surcharge testing may be directed to Amy Harbin at the City of Long Beach. Her contact information is provided at the end of the presentation. The response plan presents a detailed narrative of the site background and existing environmental conditions and identifies appropriate response actions for the site that are protective of human health and the environment during redevelopment and after construction is completed. The document is currently out for its 30-day public comment period for public review and comments. The response plan proposes consolidating contaminated soil from multiple areas of the site into a single location, placing an asphalt or concrete cap over the site to prevent contact with contaminated soil, installing a vent system under the parking lot and buildings to address any volatile chemicals or methane in soil vapor, and recording a deed restriction with the Los Angeles County. After construction is completed, the response plan proposes groundwater and soil vapor monitoring around the perimeter of the site to ensure contamination is not migrating beyond the site boundary. The site will be subject to ongoing operation and maintenance, with more in-depth reviews performed every 5 years to ensure that the remedy remains protective of human and environmental health. As part of the response plan, the engineered cap will be placed over the entire site, included where the contaminated soil is consolidated. The cap prevents anyone from coming into contact with contaminated soil and also prevents storm water from infiltrating through contaminated soil, which could impact groundwater. Any methane or vapors generated by contamination under the cap would be vented away from the buildings and away from the perimeter of the site. The proponent has committed to long-term monitoring of soil vapor and groundwater around the perimeter of the site to ensure the cap performance. If contamination is found to be spreading beyond the site footprint, additional response actions will be required. For an in-depth look at the engineered cap, it is comprised of multiple layers, specifically at least 1 foot of clean soil, at least 1 foot of asphalt and asphalt subgrade, and a continuous waterproofing layer set within the asphalt. On the slides, you can see a photo of a typical cap waterproofing installation on the right and details of the proposed cap for the site on the left. The proponent will take multiple precautions while construction is occurring to prevent any contamination from leaving the site. This will include preventing dust from leaving the site and ambient air monitoring. While the South Coast Air Quality Management District is the primary agency overseeing construction monitoring, DTSC will also be involved in holding the proponents accountable. In addition, the proponents will manage traffic and noise related to construction to minimize the impacts on the surrounding community. Tires from construction equipment will be cleaned to prevent any contaminated soil from being transported throughout the community. The next steps for this project are, first, after the end of the public comment period, DTSC will gather, review, and respond to comments received. The last day for DTSC to consider comments is September 27th. After that, the response plan may be revised based on the comments received on the response plan and the city's EIR. DTSC will then make a decision on the final response plan, and if approved, the response plan will be implemented. Subsequently, field work would be scheduled and a work notice would be posted at the site and distributed nearby before work begins. You can see an example of a DTSC work notice on the right of the slides shown. That closes my portion of the presentation, and I would like to now hand it back over to Jessica Anderson.
Thank you, Monica. Okay, so you can now find the project information on DTSC's EnviroStore database, and I'll read out the link for those that have joined by phone. The link is https:// B as in boy, it.ly/2, T as in Tom, T as in Tom, P as in Peter, F as in Frank, L as in Larry, 9. We also have the project information at 2 locations. Our DTSC Cypress Regional Office located at 5796 Corporate Avenue, Cypress, California, 90630. Please call for an appointment to review the documents at 714-484-5337. Dana Neighborhood Library is the second location, which is at 3860 Atlantic Avenue in Long Beach, California, 90807. You can reach them by phone at 562-570-1042. Next slide, please. Thank you. We want to thank our community members for your calls, emails, and staying engaged during this process. This is your opportunity to review the the draft response plan during the public comment period and send your questions or comments to Rania Zabana by September 27th, 2024. Her email address is rania.zabana@dtsc.ca.gov. You can also email them, you can, in addition to email, you can also mail them to Rania at 5796 Corporate Avenue in Cypress, California, 90630. If you have any other questions, you can also reach out to me in addition. Or if there's any media queries, you can also reach out to our Public Information Officer, Elizabeth Leslie Gassaway. Next slide, please. So here are the contact information. You have Rania, the project manager, Rania Zabana at dtsc.ca.gov. Myself, Jessica.Anderson at dtsc.ca.gov. Our public information officer, Elizabeth.Leslie-Gassaway at dtsc.ca.gov. And any city questions that you have can be directed to Amy Harbin at the City of Long Beach at amy.harbin@dtsc.ca.gov. So that ends our presentation for today. We will move on to our question and answer session. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, we're currently in the 30-day public comment period. It began on August 28th and ends September 27th, 2024. The draft response, or the response plan, is in draft form while we collect community feedback and is not final. So as a reminder, during this webinar, DTSC can answer your questions regarding the draft response plan and will record your comments. All formal responses will be given in a responsiveness summary document after the close of the public comment period. And all other questions beyond the scope of that, as I mentioned, should be directed to the City of Long Beach. So once again, if you have a question or comment, please click on the Q&A button on your toolbar at the bottom of your screen. We will not be taking the chat function for questions or comments. We do ask that you type one at a time just so that everyone has the opportunity to get their comments read or their questions answered. If we're unable to respond today, we will respond in our responsiveness summary document. Again, for those joining by phone, please press *9 to let us know you have a question. So it looks like our first question here is, DTSC showed contaminants up to 9 feet in their first report. We ask that they go deeper since the sump pond is, or I think that's supposed to be sump point, is said to be 50 feet deep. How deep is the test? How deep did you test the soil?
Hi, Jessica. This is Megan, Unit Chief. I'm going to help you field some questions, and I think this is a question for possibly Ben.
Yes, sorry, I just had to click all the buttons. I just want to say thank you for this question, and we may need to give a more full answer in the written responses, but no additional soil sampling was performed between the previous response plan and this response plan. The sump materials start at approximately 30 feet below ground surface, and we have monitoring around the perimeter of the site to make sure no contamination in those deeper sump materials moves, which we don't have any indication that it's moving currently. But the grading and excavation and remediation activities that will be performed during the response plan, all of them are above the sump materials and fairly shallow within the top 10 feet, I believe 5 feet of the surface.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Our next question says, why has our community just been barely notified of this meeting and not given sufficient time? So I think I can actually answer that. We sent out a public notice that was published on August 19th, which is about 2 weeks ago. The mailers went out shortly after that on August 21st. We also placed the documents at the local repositories on August 21st as well as August 22nd. So thank you for your question. Next one says, I would like more information on how specifically children will be kept safe from drift of toxic dust during the construction period. Los Cerritos School and playground are right there.
I think this one is me again.
Okay.
No, that is a great comment because we are very concerned with the school and the park right across the street. During construction, there will be, and actually, Monica, if this is your screen still, can you go back to slide 21? Safety during the response action.
Sure thing.
Thank you. Throughout the construction, we will be performing monitoring around the perimeter of the site and in the work areas for any dust. In addition to DTSC's monitoring, there will be South Coast Air Quality Management District permits. All work at this project will require an AQMD Rule 1466 permit. What that is a permit for excavation where soils have potentially toxic concentrations of metals in them that will require additional monitoring and actions if any dust is observed leaving the site, or if any permanent dust monitors indicate that additional dust is leaving the site. Some of the actions that we've highlighted in the presentation are spraying water, using soil stabilizers, and if the wind reaches a certain point, all work, soil moving work will need to stop. There are some additional monitoring and response requirements that will be implemented as part of Rule 1466 and the rest of the work. And some of those details are in the soil management plan, which is attached to the response plan.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so our next question says, of the oil wells on site, have they been properly, I think it's supposed to say, if the oil wells are on site, have they been properly capped?
I think I can answer this. The oil wells that were formerly on site are they're under the jurisdiction of CalGEM, which is California's Geologic and Energy Management Department, and they would need to be properly capped and mitigated and signed off on by the California agency. Again, that's CalGEM. And then they will provide the developer with the certification letter. But for additional questions regarding the proper abandonment of those wells, you can contact the city.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, our next question says, is the presentation being shown available now? We'll be uploading it onto Envirostore after this meeting. We're hoping tomorrow, but it should be sometime this week. So we should have that available shortly. Thank you so much for that question. I'm going to move on to the next one that says, what are the components of the monitoring program that the proponent is proposing?
So there are three main components of the monitoring program that's being proposed. First is inspections of the cap and all the equipment. Second is perimeter soil vapor monitoring to make sure no contaminants are moving off the site through soil vapor. And third is groundwater monitoring to make sure no contamination is leaving the site in groundwater.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so I just want to go back really quick because I did misspeak. For contact with the City of Long Beach, Amy Harbin's email address is amy.harbin@longbeach.gov. I apologize. Once again, you can reach Amy Harbin for any city questions at amy.harbin@longbeach.gov. I'm going to move straight into the next question. It says, how long will this process take to clean up the site?
I was going to pass that over to Ben. However, it may be hard to determine the schedule as of right now, since we're still in the draft stages. Ben?
Thanks, Megan. So DTSC does not control the speed of the cleanup. The EIR and response plan would need to be approved first, and then the speed of the cleanup and the work is really up to the proponent. However, of the phases of this work, there will be some early work to consolidate any contaminated soil that is shallow. And then the cap, the cover, and the venting system that have been proposed will be performed while the construction is occurring for the storage unit. And then finally, the monitoring around the perimeter monitoring and ongoing monitoring that will occur after construction is completed.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Okay, so our next question says, what are the differences between a response plan action prepared for this project and the actions prepared for the previous project?
I can talk to this one as well. Sorry, I'm Ben Stanfill. I'm the project engineer reviewing documents from the DTSC. I've been talking a lot, but I know I was only briefly introduced earlier. The previous response plan and the current response plan are largely the same. The remedy is largely the same. There are some differences related to the change in the city's CEQA process. There are some differences related to just the timing of the surcharge specifically, which is in the past now. And there are some details of the cleanup that had previously been in the implementation plans that have now been brought forward into the response plans. So some of that is the soil management plan. The newest version of that is now an appendix so that all the information we have and a more complete picture of the proposed remedy is in this response plan.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so the next one says, it says, you mentioned additional soil was added years ago with 1 to 13 feet deep. Examples from the site are provided below. Sample SB1 west side / north corner of the site at 1 foot depth, 53.4 milligram or mg/kg. And then it says 53400 ppb divided by 390 ppb equals 139x to the acceptable limit.
Yeah, this is CY. I guess I want to Ben to take a break. Since I noted that, by the way, yeah, I'm the DTSC toxicologist. Since this talk about the acceptable limit, and I also noted that there are several questions below on arsenic. And this question does not specifically say what chemical, but I assume it's also arsenic. So just to reiterate that the impacted soil that will be disturbed during construction actually will be removed. So earlier there was a question about toxic dust during construction. So yeah, DTSC's priority is make sure communities protected. So all the contaminated soil that will be potentially disturbed actually will be removed before the construction. And as far as some of the deeper contamination, the response plan, if implemented, would propose engineered cap that would basically prevent the infiltration from the surface water, and it will also prevent any direct contact.
Thank you, Dr. Suai. Okay, so the next question says, continued from previous, can the DTSC provide a red line version? I believe he's referring to the response plan.
That was my interpretation of that question, Jessica, as well. If that's the case, these draft documents, this one and the previous, are available on the public website, EnviroStore. So you can access the draft documents and make comparisons, but we don't have redline versions of those available.
Thank you, Megan. Okay. Next one says, will any comments made here be part of the record of comments to the DTSC plan for this site? So I can answer that. Yes, they will be. So any comments that are made, we will read them out. It'll be part of the transcript, but we're unable to respond to any comments regarding the response plan until after the public comment period is over. So again, I will be reading any comments made, but we cannot respond to them at this time. Any questions, feel free to send those. We will respond to any questions as to the best of our ability. So thank you for that. Okay, so the next question says, another arsenic sample SB22, middle of the site at 1 foot depth, 18.9 mg/kg, and then 18,900 ppb divided by 390 ppb equals 48.46, 48x to the acceptable level. None of these samples went below 9 feet. How will you protect the public? So Dr. Jang?
Yes, like I mentioned earlier, the shallow soil that will be disturbed will actually be removed before construction, and the engineering cap will be in place to make sure the stormwater does not reach the deeper contamination, and also would prevent any direct contact to the deeper soil.
Thank you, Dr. Jang. Okay. So next one says, what will the dust monitoring be like during non-active times at the construction site, i.e. weekends and nights?
I will need to check on that specifically. I want to acknowledge that dust monitoring is less during non-active times because everyone is not on site keeping an eye on it while the work is happening. But if you do ever see anything that thinks needs to be reported, I would encourage you to reach out to us to let us know that something's happening during the inactive periods, and we would be able to follow up with the construction company.
Thank you, Ben. Our next question says, will the school be notified when the soil work is being done? So I could probably answer that question actually. So the school is actually a part of our mailing list. So they've been notified of all of these documentation that we sent out. So the community updates, public notices, they are on the mailing list. So they are notified for that. In addition, if we have any work notices going out, they are aware of that as well. We do keep the schools informed. So thank you for that question. We have another technical question. It says another arsenic sample SB22 at 3 feet deep, 29.9. And then the equation again is 29,900 ppb divided by 390 ppb equals 76.67. So 77x the acceptable level. We need to know what is below 9 feet. So it sounds like that is a question, or that's not a question, excuse me. It sounds like that's a comment. If you're asking what's below 9 feet, CY, are you able to answer that?
Yeah. So like I say, actually, we acknowledge the concern of leaving some impacted soil at the site. But first of all, the site contamination, they do not, extend it to the offsite areas. And also engineering tap is one of the remedy that actually will prevent any direct contact of surface water, stormwater leaching to the impacted soil. So we do consider that's part of the remedy to make sure there's no direct contact or indirect contact pathway.
Thank you, Dr. Jang. Okay, so we have a couple questions here. I'll read them one at a time, just so we can answer them adequately. So the first part of this question says, what are the differences between the response plan actions prepared for this and the previous project? Can the DTSC provide a red line version? So I believe we already answered those live. In addition, it says, when will DTSC make available its response to questions here asked today? So we will be preparing a responsiveness summary or a response to comments document. The time frame, unfortunately, is hard to say because we don't know how many comments we're going to get by the end of September 27th. They will be available, as I mentioned, after the public comment period. If you would like sooner answers to some questions specifically related to the draft response plan, you can reach out to our project manager, Rania Zabena, as I mentioned, through her email. So again, it's hard to say with that one because we don't know how many comments or responses we'll have to respond to. So thank you for that. I'm going to move on to the next part of this question. It says, how is DTSC addressing the soil disturbance caused by prior grading and construction of the surcharge pile done by the applicant?
So prior to the surcharge work, DTSC reviewed and approved a soil management plan for the site. And what that soil management plan does is it says if any contaminated soil is disturbed or come into contact with, it has specific rules for how to treat that contaminated soil. But it's not a cleanup in the same way as the response plan that has that additional DTSC oversight. Most of the surcharge involved importing clean soil to the site, and so DTSC does not have direct oversight of the surcharge activities, only that if any contaminated soil was disturbed, that there was a plan to do that correctly and maintain protectiveness.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so our next question says, acceptable limits were taken from Earth Magazine. For soils, federal EPA guidelines for standards of concern begin at 390 ppb or 0.39 parts per million. And then there's a link provided here from October 2024, and it's asking what standards DTSC uses.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I assume, yeah, this is about arsenic again, based on the link. So in general, DTSC is also using federal EPA guideline. They publish what we call the regional screening levels. And DTSC actually have most stringent screening level for some chemicals. So, but in the case of arsenic, the risk-based number, I assume this is what the 0.39. Again, I can look at the most current EPA guidance to respond in our formal response. But arsenic is also naturally occurring. So for arsenic, the natural occurring level a lot of times actually higher than the risk-based screening level. So in that case, then DTSC and also EPA would actually elect to use the ambient or natural background for arsenic as a cleanup goal.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jang. Okay, next question says, I meant what will be the specific tools to monitor?
I believe this is what tools will be used to monitor for dust during the construction, in which case it will be a photoionization detector to monitor volatile organic compounds, and a dust monitor that I believe is a scintillating dust monitor, but the exact equipment may vary. But those are the main things that will be monitored are volatile organic compounds and dust.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, our next question says, does the construction company decide themselves whether to stop on windy days, i.e. how do we trust that they will stop?
The construction company does decide themselves. DTSC will also have periodic oversight, especially during times when contaminated soil is expected to be impacted. And there will be a number of environmental consultants on site overseeing the construction company to make sure they comply with the wind advisories. Finally, the South Coast Air Quality Management District will also have inspections and be reviewing records to make sure that they stop when wind reaches any of its cutoff points.
Thank you, Ben. All right, so our next question says, are the gases that are vented somehow filtered before being put out into the atmosphere?
Any of the gases that are vented, if they're actively vented, if there's a blower, they'll be tested and filtered before being put into the atmosphere. If they are passively vented, which is just a pipe that's coming from underneath the building up to the roof, that will be tested periodically. And if concentrations in that pipe are high enough, some filtration could be installed as needed.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, our next question is in regards to groundwater. It says, as far as I know, Long Beach gets some of its water from the local aquifer and not just MND or Metropolitan Water District water. Please clarify as that relates to the contaminated groundwater at the site, not endangering our drinking water.
To actually take the opportunity to bring in our geologist, Dina Porta, to answer the groundwater related question. Dina?
I'm here. Thank you. Sorry, I lost that question.
No problem. I can read it again.
Yeah, thank you.
The question is presented, as far as I know, Long Beach gets some of its water from the local aquifer, just not Metropolitan Water District water. Please clarify as to that relates to contaminated groundwater at the site, not endangering our drinking water.
Okay, thanks, Megan. Yeah, groundwater beneath the site is located about 50 feet below ground surface, and the groundwater flow direction is southerly, which is away from the elementary school, the park, and the community. The tap water and municipal water supply comes from your local purveyor, the Metropolitan Water District. They may or may not blend that supply before it's delivered to you, but it's extracted from a deeper aquifer, treated, tested, and then distributed to the community.
Thank you, Dina.
Thank you, Dina.
All right, our next question says, past experience with similar developments in another city frankly included all sorts of assurances that contaminants are not going to affect residences. The consequences were that family members died from cancer. What insurance amount will be required and which company will issue a policy to cover the next 50 years?
Hey, that's a good question, and I just don't think that it's in DTSC's jurisdiction to advise on that. We can have that recorded, but you might reach out to the local health agency, but that's not something that DTSC can opine on.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Unfortunately, it's not regarding the response plan, which is what DTSC can respond to. So I will move on to the next question. It says, lead was present in samples 1 feet deep in location SB 38. Was there more than one sample where lead was found? And will additional samples be taken?
Yes, this is CY. So yeah, the short answer is yes, lead was actually analyzed in all the soil sample and they are found in many of the samples. As far as this SB 38, that's actually proposed. That location will be proposed with removal of lead impacted soil. I think there's another location in the response plan, SB 45, that also have lead impacted soil that will be removed as part of the response plan if implemented. And again, in the proposed response plan, actually will collect what we call the confirmation soil sample in these two areas, make sure the soil removal actually take out all the impacted soil by lead.
Dr. Jang. Okay, our next question says, how is DTSC addressing the soil disturbance caused by prior grading and construction of a surcharge pile done by the applicant?
I think we answered this one earlier, and again, all of that was done under the soil management plan that had previously been approved.
Thank you, Ben. This one says, so is DTSC monitoring a cleanup or just a cap? It seems like there will not be a cleanup, only a cap, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, actually, Ben, you can jump in, but I just want to clarify maybe what I previously say. That was maybe not clear. CAP is only one component of the remedy, and there are like 12 areas with impacted soil by various chemical that actually will be removed. Again, that's another component of the remedy. So I just want to clarify that, and I don't know, Ben, maybe you can give a more complete picture on what different elements of the response plan entail?
I was just going to say that's a very fair comment, and unfortunately, the way DTSC describes their response plan and remediation plans, cleanup is often used to encompass things such as caps that prevent anyone from coming into contact with contaminated media, but don't remove the contamination from the site. It's confusing, and we apologize for it, but as part of our language that's inclusive of all the different things we do, sometimes cleanup gets used, and I think the way the comment phrases it is fair. Mostly this is going to be a cap.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so the next question says, I am confused about comment versus question. If we submit questions as opposed to comments to the report, will they not be responded to? So I can answer that. So public comments, we will respond to at the end of the public comment period in a responsiveness summary after it's closed out. But the questions, if you're submitting them today, we will answer clarifying questions in regards to the draft response plan, yes. If you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to Rania, as I mentioned before, to have any that weren't answered at this meeting that you would like to have them answered quicker, as opposed to comments that will be responded to at the end of the public comment period. So hopefully that clarified some things. We are required to respond to all of them at this meeting. So hopefully that answers your questions for now. And I will move on to the next one, which is a comment. So I will read one. It says, I feel that any soil removed should take place in the summer when the school is not open. So thank you very much for that comment. We will be responding to that at the end of after the public comment period has ended in our responsiveness summary. And I will move on to the next question now. It says, do you know if the pipeline that was under the surcharge work was damaged, and will contaminants go in the river?
Unfortunately, the pipeline under the surcharge work is outside of DTSC's jurisdiction, and the analysis for whether the surcharge and the building are okay to be on top of the pipeline would be in the purview of the city and their approval process. So we cannot say one way or the other on that question.
Thank you, Ben. Next question says, will there be a siren to alert the neighborhood of toxic dust particles that may have been released from the site?
That's something that we can look into. Some of those details I'll have to check in on and check with the construction company on how they would notify anyone that they have had to make a response.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, next question says, one of the TPH compounds, benzene, has been shown to cause cancer, leukemia in people. The International Agency on Research for Cancer has determined that benzene is carcinogenic to humans group 1 classification. Elevated concentrations of benzene and methane were detected in soil vapor in 9 locations. What is going to keep that from going out into the community? Dr. Jing?
Yeah, I can answer the first part of the question, and I will let Ben answer the last part of the question. So yeah, thanks for the question. And it's correct that benzene is considered carcinogen to human. But when we look at both carcinogens and non-carcinogen, we compare with the regulatory risk-based screening level. And so in this case, what we found on site for benzene and methane. Methane is mainly the safety hazard, the explosion hazard, but the concentration for methane, they are below what we call the low explosion limit currently. So, but we will continue monitor that. And then benzene, again, there are monitoring programs that will be in place, but I will let Ben, address how we will, control the soil vapor.
Thanks, CY. So benzene and soil vapor is one of our main concerns at the site. And some of the previous soil vapor sampling that was done did identify benzene and soil vapor in some areas. Now, there's two ways that we're going to control that. The first is with our perimeter monitoring. We have a tight spacing of soil vapor probes at the edge of the site facing the school and the residences. And if any benzene is detected in those probes, we'll need to do additional actions. And we wanted to make sure that that was acknowledged in the response plan, that some off-site step-outs of benzene, off-site soil vapor monitoring step-outs would be required if we saw benzene around the edge of the site. Now, the other thing we have is the venting system, which could be run in two ways. The first is a passive venting system, but if needed, we could hook up a fan or a vacuum to the venting system and operate that with filtration and treatment to make sure that no benzene is leaving the site. Essentially, we would start, if here's the school, here's the benzene, here's the site, we would hook up a giant vacuum that is sucking it back towards the site and then treating it appropriately.
Thank you, Ben. All right, next question says, would it not be better to cap the contaminated soil rather than disturbing and removing it, which can make contaminants airborne?
That is one of the things that was considered. Unfortunately, as part of the grading for the site as a whole, there was going to be some soil disturbance. So we thought it best that prior to doing the grading for the site as a whole, we take all the soil in contaminated areas, consolidate them into one area, and then we're able to more easily monitor any other work that's being done is able to stay away from where the contaminated soil is. Now, there are some locations where it might make more sense to keep contaminated soil in place based on the development plans. But we would work that out with the construction company and the developers as those development plans are fine, as or if those plans are finalized and approved with the city.
Thank you, Ben. Okay. Next question says, if the site sits over the groundwater aquifer that flows south, then does that mean that the contaminated groundwater will reach our ocean?
Hi, I can take that question. Thank you. So the contamination in groundwater is at a low level, and it will be monitored continuously afterwards. And the site is far enough away from the ocean that it won't impact the ocean or receptors at the ocean.
Thank you, Dina. Okay. Our next question says, where does the contaminated soil get removed to? What happens to the removed contaminated soil?
So under the current plan, there is no removal of contaminated soil. All the contaminated soil is being kept on site. It may be moved within the site so that it can all be capped and kept safely together, but none of the contaminated soil under the current document would be removed from the site.
All right, great. Thank you, Ben. All right, so our next question says, this site is on an earthquake fault. Will a cap prevent the public from contamination in the event of an earthquake?
You know, part of the proposed cap is long-term monitoring and maintenance of the cap, so that if there is an earthquake or a large seismic event, we would be able to see and respond to any damage to the cap that's put in place. One other part of the cap as a long-term remedy that will be required is the developer will need to put up financial assurance, which is a bond or an account to pay for any of the ongoing inspections in the event that the developer can't. So they will have a financial stake and need to put up money to make sure that the cap is able to be maintained in the future.
Thank you, Ben. You might want to stay on. I think the next one might relate as well. It says, what happens to the soil that is removed?
Yeah, as I mentioned previously, right now, no soil is proposed to be removed from the site.
Thank you for clarifying that, Ben. Okay, so it says, how do you expect all people living and working near this proposed development to not oppose this project if all the answers this evening cover up the true dangers? To whom do we address our questions that was passed up regarding ensuring future health and safety, including future insurance policies to cover catastrophic illnesses? And I think, as Megan mentioned, to reach out to our Department of Public Health and stuff like that. I'm not sure, maybe you can clarify your question as far as what DTSC has jurisdiction over. So maybe you can clarify that question a little bit, but yeah, unfortunately, that's not regarding our response plan. So the next question is kind of related to that, so I'll read it as well. Who approves DTSC? Can anyone respond to that one?
I can, this is Megan. So the DTSC is an agency within California EPA. So California EPA is the head of or above DTSC.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, so next question says, if you take the action to remove the contaminants like arsenic and lead where they were found during sampling, what about where you didn't sample?
No, that is a great question, and part of our evaluation for the response plan is, has there been enough sampling so that we really understand where the issues are? If you happen to have the response plan open, figure 4 shows a list or shows the site with the locations of all the borings that were advanced that we looked at. And based on that, we feel that we have a good understanding of where contamination is. And one thing that goes back to some previous questions that were asked, any of the soil that's being moved during the grading, we do want to make sure that we have enough samples there to really understand what's happening for any of the soil that's being moved during the grading. That also happens to be soil that is generally shallower.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so we have a two-part question. The first one says, who approves DTSC's response plan? So someone who might be able to respond to that. And then the second part says, who pays for DTSC to produce the response plan?
I think I can answer that, Jessica. So DTSC's response plan is currently it's in draft. So we have a 30-day public comment period. We'll take into consideration your questions and comments. And if the plan should be revised, it will be. So currently it's in draft and it will be after the 30 days, it's deemed adequate for implementation. if all the comments are addressed and none of them, impact the current remedies that are outlined in the response plan. And the payment, who pays for DTSC to produce the response plan? The funding for the project is through the developer.
Megan. Okay, our next question says, if the soil is not removed, how are the contaminants contained?
Sorry, I have problems clicking the video. So there's 3 layers to the cap. First is, and Monica, can you go to slide 20? So the first layer of the cap is at least 1 foot of clean soil. Above that is 1 foot of the asphalt, and within the asphalt is a waterproof sheet. And so what the clean soil and asphalt does, asphalt or concrete, is it will prevent anyone from walking around from coming into contact with that contaminated soil. And then the other thing that the waterproofing sheet does is it prevents any rainwater or stormwater from coming into contact with the contaminated soil and moving the contamination that way. So those are the main 2 ways that the cap keeps the soil contained, is that it prevents people from coming into contact with it, and it prevents any water from coming in from the surface and moving through that contaminated soil.
I think you might want to stay on, Ben. Next question says, will this mound of contaminated soil be capped like a little hill?
So I am not sure what the mound is referring to, but it may be the surcharge. The surcharge was primarily clean imported soil. And so our understanding is that during the development, the surcharge will be moved and that mound of soil will no longer remain.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so again, it says if the soil is not being removed from the site, then why disturb the soil and move it to another part of the site?
And I think that's something that we will look at when the development plan is also approved. There may be some areas where we don't need to move anything and can leave them alone. But as part of the development, there's going to be excavators and trucks driving around the site. Before all of that happens, we want to consolidate the soil in one place so we can put up cones or fencing for all the construction crew to say, don't go here. And it can be, if we're not able to consolidate that in one area, we're not able to exert the same control on the construction crew. And so that's the main reason for consolidating this prior to the site-wide grading happening.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, it says it was mentioned that which soil is removed or where on the site it might be kept. Is it dependent on the development plan?
That is somewhat dependent on the development plan. Because that has not been finalized or approved, the final determination on that location can't be completely finalized. But all of this would be out of the way where no one could come in contact with it. And I believe the current thinking is that it would be underneath the building.
Thank you, Ben. So the next question says, does that mean your plan is not final? I think I can probably address that, but anyone that wants to add to it, feel free. That's correct. Right now it is not final. It's in draft form while we collect community feedback. So we're going to be taking public comments. We'll evaluate those public comments. We have to consider and respond to any of them that are sent in during the public comment period before taking any action on the proposed response plan. So right now, as I said, it is not approved plan. It is a proposed plan. And we have to consider all questions and comments before we decide one way or another. So I think I will open the floor if anyone else. but otherwise I can move on to the next question. Okay. Okay, so I'll move on to the next question. It says, actually, this looks like it's a comment. It says, the answer to the question about contaminated water reaching the ocean stated that the ocean's too far away. The water will flow into the LA River, which flows into the ocean. Thank you very much for that comment. I will move on to the next question then. It says, how long did DTSC take to produce the draft response plan of 819 pages? You expect the local community of working folks to read and comment by September 27th, only 24 days from now.
I wasn't sure if you or I could take that one, but that's a
Yeah, I mean,
Juan.
so go ahead, Megan.
I don't mind taking it. It's quite an extensive technical document. And so the purpose of this meeting is to summarize and give the community just a high level understanding of the project. You're more than welcome to dive into it and explore all the technical details, and maybe that'll trigger some more technical questions for you to ask, and we'll be happy to address those as well in the response of this summary. Jessica, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so our standard review for all of our site mitigation projects is 30 days. That is what we give everyone as a standard. And so this was a standard 30-day public comment period up until September 27th. If you have any clarifying questions, you can feel free to send it in prior to that to get any clarification prior to that public comment date. And again, it is a proposed response plan from the developer. And so we will need to take a look at all of your comments. So this is your opportunity during this 30-day public comment period to provide all your questions and comments for our consideration. So thank you again for that question. I'm going to move on to the next one where it says, where will the entrance to these facilities be?
DTSC does not know where the entrance to the facilities will be. That's part of the development plans that would be approved by the city.
Thank you, Ben. Okay. Okay, it looks like the next one might be a comment here. It says all of these answers do not respond to what happens in the immediate moment of an emergency, such as an earthquake disturbance. Of the CAP, DTSC has not provided sufficient assurances that its investigation and future protocols will provide 100% environmental safety for workers, the neighborhood, and the communities downstream. We will send our detailed objections in writing. In short, tonight's answers are all theoretical, not incorporating documented dangerous impacts of past projects. So thank you for that comment. I will move on to the next question, which says, after the plan is approved and changes need to be made after the approval due to the developmental plan, which may not be finalized before your remediation plan is final, will there be another 30-day public comment period? Megan, I might be able to answer that question.
If you can answer it, go for it. Thank you.
No. So yeah, at this time, I'm going to have to verify that. I'm not sure if we'll go through another public comment period, but we will respond to that in our response to comments document and let you know if that is possible at all. So thank you for that question. We will make sure to get back to you on that one. Okay, and then it looks like there's a question specifically for Megan. It says, we know we're free to do whatever we wish. However, do you expect us to take a vacation on this? What would you do? Would you simply approve this if you had something like this happen next to your home or across your school?
I would just say, Juan, we have registered professionals, and our mission here, registered professional scientists that I trust in a lot technically. and they've put a lot of work and effort into this project. So, we're working in accordance with DTSC's mission to protect human health and the environment. And that is our mission, and that is what we are doing with this site. And that's why we've evaluated several of these remedies and have elected to move forward with the consolidation under the engineered cap. So, would you simply approve this if you had something like this happening next to your home or across your school? I see this as a trusted project, and I trust the team of technical scientists that have really come together to ensure that this is safe for human health and the environment. And I'll leave it at that unless anybody else has anything to add.
Thank you, Megan. We appreciate that. Just as a reminder, this is like I said, it's a draft response plan. This is just what's being proposed. We haven't made any decision on this. So like you said, a lot of it is theoretical. We do have a trusted team that are, subject matter experts. And so, we have to take in all public comments for consideration before we even take any action on the response plan, including potentially approving it, editing it, or denying it, right? So this is your opportunity to comment during this public comment period and let us know what your concerns are, or if you support this project, and we will respond to everything in the responsiveness document at the end of the public comment period. So thank you for that question. I'm going to move on to the next one. It says, can you provide locations where the engineered cap was used and the result?
I can look at this. Engineered caps are often used, especially for one of the most common places they are used are where we have metals in soil, because the metals, since they're an element, can't be destroyed, and it may be worse for the community of digging them up and transporting them through than capping them in place. I can look at providing some examples in the response to comments, but caps are often used really, especially and specifically for metals in soil.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, looks like we have another question that says, the Dominguez Gap wetlands are just north of the site. Will there be any contamination to the wetlands?
Dina, do you want to go for this one?
Yeah, I was going to come on for this one. Thank you. So the groundwater flow direction is southerly, and we will have perimeter groundwater monitoring wells on site to monitor any migration of groundwater offsite.
Thank you, Dina. Ben, did you want to add anything?
Nope, that was perfect.
Thank you very much, Ben. Okay, so our next question says, who do we assess a plan that you have not made a decision on?
I can. Oh, Megan, do you want to go?
You're probably a little bit more eloquent than me, so I'll pass the ball to you.
There's actually two questions that just came in that are very similar. The first one is, how do we assess a plan that you have not made a decision on? And the second question is, why doesn't DTSC give preliminary approval and then invite the public to comment? Would that not be a better use of everyone's time? And I want to take a little bit of a step back and just run through where this plan is in the cycle, because that second comment, I think, is actually a better representation of where we are. So the response plan is prepared by the property owner and the developer and submitted to DTSC as a proposal of, hey, we think that we can control any contamination with this approach. This response plan has gone through a draft and a round of updates where DTSC issued comments to the developer. And at this point, while we're still looking at it, and we feel, I'll say, generally good, we want to make sure that it goes out to the public and the public has a chance to comment, because, you know, DTSC as a state agency is really your representative, and we don't want to approve anything before you as the public have had a chance to review and comment. So I would say that the description of, while DTSC has not preliminarily approved anything, we do feel like then the response plan is in a spot where it could be approved, but all of this is still pending the public comment process that we're in right now.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, so that's correct. We reviewed the plan, and basically we try to make sure that it is considered adequate for in being protective and in line with our mission statement. So once we determine that's the case, then we put it out for public comment, as Ben mentioned. So thank you very much for that question. It looks like we have another question about abandoned wells. They're wanting to know where the abandoned wells are in relation to this project.
So the abandoned oil wells are in the northern corner of the project and in the southern area near the proposed building. And if you look on figure 8 of the response plan, that shows the location of all of the oil wells.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, it looks like we have a comment here. It says, we respectfully request that this meeting be rescheduled until after the November presidential elections. And can you send the letters by mail with a 40-point red letters, important community meeting on the outside? This will assure more transparency and properly inform our community. Thank you very much for your comments. We will take that into our public comment record. Thank you very much. Next question says, if this were developed a passive park rather than a parking lot on a 4-story warehouse, how or what would your response be different? So I think it's saying that if this was developed as a park rather than a parking lot and a 4-story warehouse, what or how different would our response plan be?
I'm not certain we can opine on this one, as DTSC has no, we have no say in land use decisions. So I would leave it at that.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, I don't see any questions in here. So I'll give the community members a couple minutes here just to make sure that all the questions are answered. Monica, if you can put the contacts back up on the screen, that way everyone has a chance to potentially write them down or grab a screenshot of the contacts, please. Thank you very much. So once again, if you had some questions that maybe weren't answered at this question or at this community meeting, you can send your questions to myself, Jessica Anderson at dtsc.ca.gov, or Rania Zabana at rania.zabana@dtsc.ca.gov. As I mentioned before, the media queries can be sent to our public information officer, Elizabeth Leslie Gassaway. To repeat her email, it is elizabeth.leslie-gassaway@dtsc.ca.gov. And once again, anything outside the draft response plans, things such as development questions, you can direct those to the City of Long Beach. Amy Harbin is the contact. You can reach her at amy.harbin@longbeach.gov. So I still don't see any further. Oh, we got another question in here. It says, is CalGEM involved in this already? I know it's not your purview, but do you know if the wells need to be capped as part of this project?
Ben, do you know if they were capped previously or still need to be capped? I'm not entirely certain. But CalGEM is a very vigorous process for cap.
I am not sure of the current status. However, in section 3.4 of the response plan, it lays out that if this is approved, CalGEM would need to be engaged to make sure everything is
Mhm.
capped and taken care of during the proposed work.
Right. They have very strict guidelines for capping and also sometimes setbacks to have your building like a safe distance away from abandoned wells, but that's in their purview. You might probably reach out to them if you have other questions about the wells on that site.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to give another couple of minutes just in case there's any further questions that would like to be answered. If not, we can conclude a little early, but I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to get their questions answered or comments recorded on record. So we'll give another couple of minutes here. Q&A call. So currently we have, looks like 26 people on this call.
And it had gotten up to 29 earlier.
And that's not including panelists, that's community members.
Yeah, people attending. There are currently 26. At some point, there were 29. I will have a report of that shows how many people were at this meeting. So we will give you an exact number in the responsiveness summary. Okay, I don't see any further questions. Like I said, I will leave another minute or so just to make sure. Okay, so let's see. So we got a comment that just says, thank you. Thank you for your support on that. Thank you. The next question says, will you provide names? So with that, I'll have to double check on that and make sure that there's no privacy laws or anything like that that might apply. But if we can provide names, we will provide names. Okay, and then next question says, how many notifications were mailed or emailed? So like I said, we published in two different local newspapers, an English one and a Spanish one. As far as the mailing goes, the notifications, like I said, the mailing list was a little over 500 people or so. And we have not only our quarter-mile radius mailing list, we also have our key contacts, as well as our mandatory list that was also sent out to. And then we emailed everyone that requested to be on the list as part of the survey, as well as, as well as some of the people that requested to be on there as part of the mandatory list. So currently for emails, we had, looks like there are 37 people that were part of that email list. So thank you for that question. We'll give another moment or so in case there's any other ones that want to come in. Okay. I don't see any other questions. We'll give another moment or so, just in case we have some people typing. Okay. So I don't see any other questions on here. So So it looks like we don't have any other questions on that. So this concludes the Q&A session for today. Once again, we are currently in our It began on August 28th and it ends on September 27th, 2024. So this, once again, is your opportunity to send us your comments during that public comment period. Please provide news sources where the meeting was announced. We'll do, I believe the one was in the Long Beach Telegram and El Clasificado as the Spanish newspaper as well. I have to confirm on the English version, but I believe it was the Press Telegram. But we will confirm this in our response to comments document. Thank you very much. So as I mentioned, once again, this is your opportunity to send any comments during the public comment period. And since we don't have any other further questions, this will also conclude our meeting for today. We want to thank everyone for your interest as well as participating today. Please reach out to us if you have any further questions. Thank you again and have a great evening.